Well, good morning. My name is Dan Kinjorski, and welcome to the Journey podcast at Pathfinder Counseling Group, where we guide the way forward. Our address is 101 Hatcher Lane, Suite D, off of Wilma Rudolph and East Trenton Road, behind the Walgreens and Casablanca Mexican restaurant on Wilma Rudolph. Our phone number is 931-444-5630. You can also find us on www.pathfindercounselinggroup.org. Today we're going to talk on marriage and family with Crystal Barbosa, our resident licensed marriage and family therapist. Crystal, we know you're not fully licensed yet. You're earning your hours. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Pathfinder Counseling Group.
Okay, so I'm working on my hours, but I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I primarily work with Gottman. It's Dr. John Gottman. He created the Love Lab in the 70s, and I love working with couples based off of him because it's very indirect. He has my couples do assessments, each of them, and then he puts them together and he kind of goes, this is where you guys are doing really, really well, and this is where you guys are kind of struggling. Quite often it's communication, because we all know communication is the key to relationships.
Right.
But it also gives us the tools to fix those little areas that we're struggling in our relationships. And so those are the tools that we go through. I want to say that majority of our sessions have like a 30-minute intro, which is kind of the lessons from John Gottman, and then we kind of go in and we practice those lessons for the next hour. That's why my sessions are an hour and a half.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. Tell us a little more about, because when you mention the Love Lab, it's kind of different connotations, or there could be some different connotations. Tell us a little bit more about Gottman's Love Lab.
Yeah, so Dr. John Gottman, like I said, it started in the 70s. He and his wife, actually, they started the Love Lab, and it all began with John Gottman, actually. He struggled finding a girlfriend at the time when he was in college, and so him and his friend actually created the algorithm because they wanted to get a girlfriend. That's where this all started. Okay. And then down the road, he realized that the algorithm was really good on comparing couples that would work versus couples that wouldn't work. And then he expanded on that and he started interviewing couples. And he created the Love Lab, which is a building that was created for his experiments, basically. Okay. So he would have couples have an argument or a conversation, and each couple was wired in with different, what do you call those little things that they stick all over you? Electrodes. Thank you. Electrodes, and they would monitor their sweat, they would monitor their movement, they would monitor how they look, which way they turned, if they fidget in the couch. All those little things are different ways that they would test on how the relationship was working, as well as how the conversation would continue to go if it turned into a really big argument, or if the couple was able to use kind words and kind of work through the argument in a peaceful way and get a resolution. And so he basically was like, these are the things that couples that succeed do, and these are the things that if you do this, you're likely to end in divorce. And it's actually really interesting because based off of his algorithm, he's actually been proven to be able to predict divorce by 91%.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You said something about communication is the key to relationships.
Yeah.
Is that what you're finding in a lot of couples? Is communication really the key, or can there be other factors involved in relationships? And if there were, what would be the second or third position in terms of keys to relationship or problems to work on?
Yeah, so John Gottman, he actually has 4 things that he states are kind of the make or break things in a relationship. The first is harsh startups, and it's what I was talking about, communication. So when you're having a relationship and you're having a conversation in that relationship and you start it with something that's very negative, you're likely to get a very negative comeback. So with soft startups, it's just stating that however you start that conversation, you want to be mindful of your words, how you state it, because the other person is going to react to them. Right. The second part that he also, besides communication, is getting to know one another's love story. You really want to get to know your partner. I always say the good, the bad, and the fugly. You want to know everything, everything, because that's your partner. That's your best friend. Right. That's your partner for life. And if you get to know everything, and I always tell my couples this, if you come into your living room and your partner's crying on the couch, you want to have an idea of what could possibly be the reasoning for it. You don't want to be out in the, not knowing anything. And so I always tell my couples, get to know each other as well as you know yourself, because that's your best friend and that's going to be your ally for life. So besides communication, definitely getting to know each other's love stories, or what Gottman calls the love map, and it's getting to know everything about one another.
You're talking about the love map. And for me, that speaks of possibly the past stories or the past life, not past life, but their life journey up until the relationship.
Yeah.
So what tools can you use outside of what Gottman offers in terms of the love map? What tools do you use to look at that love map?
So I kind of like Bowen, and he's Bowenian theories and everything, and I kind of go towards system theories. But one thing that I start a lot of and this isn't just for my marriage counseling, it's just for in general, is genograms. I love genograms. Genograms are kind of what I call fancy pants family trees, like psychological family trees. So we get to know not just your aunts and uncles and your grandma and your grandpa, but what illnesses do they struggle with? Right. How were their parenting styles? Were there any addictions? Those things. So we kind of go a little bit deeper than just the regular family tree. But with that, you get to see, okay, how did your partner, how were they raised? What relationships did they witness? How did their mom and dad handle conflict? Because a lot of time, however they witness conflict being handled is how they're going to handle their own relationship conflicts.
Okay. What I like to use, and it's a tool, it's only a tool, it's not a diagnostic tool or anything like that, but what I like to use is the Adverse Childhood Experiences Scale.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit about your experience using ACEs as a tool.
So I actually used ACEs for the first time when I worked for the school system here. We have a lot of kids, believe it or not, that have a lot of hard homes that they grow up in and things that they're dealing with that we might not know. A lot of times when kids come to school, we would, wonder why they're so grumpy. Well, you don't know what they just dealt with. Did they have to wake up their brother and sister and get them ready for school too? Did mom and dad have an argument? Did they not have food at home, no breakfast? And the ACEs, it tells you all the traumas that you could have possibly witnessed throughout your life. And depending on how many you have, it predicts your possible struggles throughout life. So you're more likely to have an addiction, you're more likely to deal with depression or anxiety. And so depending on how many of those that you have, and it can be anything from abuse to neglect, and like I said, just how your household is, tells you how you're gonna, deal with life and how hard it's gonna be, sadly. But yeah, depending on your ACEs score.
Yeah, in my research on ACEs, that's part of my dissertation project, I found that there's more of a relationship versus a prediction, and it's up till age 18.
Okay.
Yeah, and I find that there's more of a relationship, someone who has been abused, there might be, as they begin to act out as an adult, it might be related to their childhood experiences, and I know that because my professor keeps pounding in me, Dan, it's not a cause and effect; it's a relationship. It's correlation.
Right. Yeah. Much like the genogram, everything is correlated from what we grew up with.
Yes. So our past childhood has a lot to do with our adulthood. Would you say that?
Oh, yeah. I completely agree. And I think as a therapist, that's something that we all kind of look at. Anytime anybody comes in with whatever it might matter, whatever they're dealing with, I always go back and I do a genogram and see what's going on. It just gives us a clearer picture of everything, of your entire client, I feel.
Yes. Yeah. I think, and that's why I love it. I think, too, I love using the ACEs work.
Yeah.
Because it goes to a tool, and it just informs me to ask questions behind behind their answers. That's all it does for me. It doesn't diagnose me. Oh, they're diagnosed with childhood adverse circumstance, whatever it may be. No, it's just if anything, it informs me whether or not they've had a trauma.
Yeah. And a lot of times we need to know that because that's the core of the issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And now let me ask you something. You said when I worked with the school system, we used a lot of that, right? A lot of ACEs.
Oh, yes.
So where else have you worked at? And tell us a little bit about your work history. I'd like the audience to know a little bit more about you.
So I used to, my first job, I was a traveling therapist. I actually worked for the state of Kansas because we were stationed there because I'm married to a Army soldier, now he's retired. And I was a traveling therapist. So it was myself and a social worker, and we would go to different houses and do family therapy. It was the families in their own element, which is a whole different level. You get to see everything, kids running around and everything. And then I worked as a substance therapist in a nonprofit clinic, and that was amazing. I did a lot of group. I love doing group. And after that, I worked for a private practice, and I did kind of what I do now, but a little bit more play therapy. Because I do have some play therapy certification, and then now here back doing kind of a little bit more focused more on my marriage counseling, and I prefer that anyway.
Yes. Yes.
So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Okay. You've worked at many other places. What agencies have you worked at before?
Like I said, I worked for the state. I worked for Pawnee Mental Health, which was a nonprofit clinic in Kansas. I've worked for this district here, CMCSS. And I worked for a couple of their behavioral programs. And then I worked for what used to be here, it was called Crossroads Counseling. Okay. Sadly, they closed down, but that was the other place I worked. And then I worked for Centerstone. I worked for their crisis counseling first, and then I worked just as a regular inpatient therapist.
Where at in crisis counseling did you work at Centerstone?
I worked for their hotline.
Oh, I see.
So I was the one that if between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., I would get the crisis calls, and we would have to go to the ER sometimes and do the evaluations. Yeah.
Now, you've been with us for less than a month.
I know.
Yes.
I can't believe it. It feels like longer, though. I love it.
Yeah. What is it that you love about here at Pathfinder Counseling Group?
That it's like family. Yeah. I love it because it's like family. I love it because we're very close, understanding and patient, and there's lots of love. You can feel it from the moment you walk in the door. You feel the love, and I think unlike other places where it's very commercial, it kind of feels stagnant, white walls, the offices are all the same and very, very plain. Right. This is more homey and comfortable, and like I said, it just feels like family. Yeah,
you said the offices are more sterile, more,
Oh, yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, how my office needs some TLC, and then I think about Jake's right behind us, who's decorated immaculately in terms of a lot of his histories on the walls. Yeah. And then I think about each of you. You're
a little bit different.
Yeah, each of your offices, your own office is much different, and so is Heidi's and Ashley's, and we're about to So I don't want to talk any more about that.
It's okay. We got surprises coming.
Yeah, we got surprises.
Good surprises.
Good surprises. Yeah. So so tell us so far, what have you seen in, especially, and you're married to a veteran. So what have you seen outside of communication? What have you seen a lot of in terms of marriage? Is it just communication? What else could there be?
It could be a few things. Like I said earlier, the love maps is a huge one, getting to know one another, and then getting to understand that yourself, that you're not always the person that your partner's against. A lot of times we have so much hostility within ourselves or past pain, past traumas, that we start taking it on to our closest and dearest love, which is always our partner. And we need to learn that it's our partner as our ally, that they're on our side. And that comes with the communication and the love maps. The closer that we get to know one another, the closer we're going to be and feel with them, that when we need them, we're not going to use them as kind of not just our soundboard, but our punching bag. We don't want them to be our punching bag. We want them to be our partner. But yeah.
So why is it that we take it out? Why do you think we might take it out on our partners?
Oh, well, it's obvious. We know our partner more than anybody else. You know the buttons to your partner. I know the buttons to my partner. We know how to make them happy, and we know how to really, really get under their skin.
Right.
Yeah.
So we know how to trigger them.
We do know how to trigger them.
We know how to trigger them. And also, I think there's a key to that, too, not just knowing how to trigger them.
Yeah.
But I think maybe, can you speak to more about why is it safe to do it? Why do we feel safe? Not it is safe, but why do we feel safe?
Well, we feel safe because that's the person that we've come closest to spending the rest of our life with.
Right.
That's the person that we are, it's in our vows, till death do you part, for better or worse. And you're going to go through everything, hell and high water with that person. So you got to have that feeling of safety, that feeling of devotion from your partner. But quite often, our trauma or our past kind of holds us back, and we might sabotage ourselves without realizing it by, like I say, doing a harsh startup. Maybe your partner says something, and the way you react ends up making an argument just because you had a harsh startup, a harsh reaction. So it's those little things that connect and create either an argument or an argument that comes to a conclusion, a peaceful conclusion anyway.
Right. Give us an example or a couple of examples of a harsh startup.
So a harsh startup. So harsh startups can be starting words, starting things with profanity, calling somebody a degrading word or a name, throwing things from the past back at them. That's a really big one. Or even stonewalling them, not saying anything at all. That can be just as bad as saying something. But yeah, those would be definitely it.
Right. So what's the, I'm reminded of my own experiences and in my own training as a former Army chaplain that I often worked with the Army marriage and family therapists, or what do we call them, family life chaplains. And so I remember a couple of my trainings where we would discuss things like, don't start a conversation with you. You always do this. Can you
always
speak?
I statements.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Yes.
Speak to that for a minute.
Yes, the infamous I statement. So this is kind of like therapy 101 or marriage counseling 101 is always start with I statements. It automatically puts the partner on the defensive when you start blaming them automatically. You did this, you didn't do that. And you don't want to start a conversation with a harsh startup. It's going to put them on the defensive. So always start with I. I feel that when this happens, this makes me feel. Again, I statements all the way around, and it's going to make it where it doesn't feel like they're being bombarded or, they're not being blamed for whatever the situation might be. And so they're not going to be as defensive. And that's the best way to just have a better conversation start.
The way I look at it too as well is when you use an I statement, I feel neglected, I feel hurt. When you start that way, we make ourselves, using I statements, we make ourselves vulnerable. It's sort of like opening up our chest cavity and revealing our heart to our partner. And here's my heart. I'm making I feel this way, when this happens. And by doing that, you just make yourself vulnerable. Yeah. And
that's exactly what you need to be with your partner, is vulnerable. Yeah. And quite often we're scared to be vulnerable because of past traumas. We're scared to put our heart on our sleeve, I guess, as people like to say, because we're scared that what happened in the past might happen again.
We're going to feel rejected, possibly. Exactly. We're going to be rejected. Yeah. Yeah. There's another item I thought about is when my partner uses to me, you do this. If you watched any movies, Marvel movies, you've seen Wakanda.
Wakanda, yeah.
Yeah, and they had that invisible shield, and they would hit a button or do something, and this invisible shield would come up.
Yeah.
And that's what happens to us when our partner has a harsh startup with us. or says you do this, and it's like we raise the shield and
Oh, yeah.
we begin to defend ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, it sounds like maybe in a future podcast, we can talk more about communication styles
Oh, yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
I would like to do that with you. You said know ourselves. Why do, okay, why do we take it out on our partners? We have already addressed that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, you've been with us for less than a month, and we're coming up on your first month, and next week it'll be your first month with us. And tell us a little bit more about your ideal client.
My ideal client? There's not an ideal client.
There's not an ideal client.
No. I guess what you're always hoping for is that your client arrives ready and kind of open and willing to accept whatever we're willing to teach them, give them the feedback we give. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people are going to be closed off depending on their history with therapy. Some people have had therapists that rub them the wrong way, and I've had the same. Some people have never been introduced to therapy, and this is their first session. So mm-hmm. It just depends on their experience mm-hmm. with therapy. But yeah.
So you use Gottman, and you like to use a 90-minute session with family and marriage therapy. Now, all our clinicians here do not utilize a 90-minute session.
Just me.
But yeah, just you, because it's important.
It is, yes.
I mean, you're working with a couple. Mm-hmm. And it's hard with one person at 53 minutes plus up to 60. So working with two individuals as a couple, we need that. Plus the psychoeducation that comes with it.
Oh, yeah.
The training from Gottman, watching the Gottman videos and so forth. How long have you been certified with Gottman?
It's been about 3 years now.
3 years?
I want to say 3 years now, yeah.
Okay.
And I recently got certified to also do conferences, Gottman conferences, so I can do big groups as well. And so depending on the size of the group, it can be a one-day thing or it can be a 2-day conference. And because I just really want to help marriages.
Right.
And I figured, well, instead of seeing just one couple, if I did like a conference, I could help maybe like 8 people at a time.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, we are going to do a conference here shortly. We just got to figure out which Saturday to use.
Yes.
And I talked to someone that's going to allow us to use their facilities.
Oh, yeah.
And he just asked to let him know which Saturday so we can make sure it's clear of other activities. But we are going to do that. What is it? Gottman is Gottman faith-based strictly, or tell us a little bit about the system of Gottman.
It's not strictly faith-based, but he is a man of faith.
Okay.
He's Jewish, and there's a lot of Christian faith that's interwoven within his applications. Okay. So there's different things that he will bring up, and he will periodically, especially in his books, because he's written several amazing books, he will bring up different things that are faith-based. So depending on the situation, he will remind you that, your relationship, your marriage is a holy marriage, and it is something that you are to keep sacred. Right. But it's not 100% just based on biblical readings. I like to say it's a good mix of the two. Okay. Yeah.
All right. And so Pathfinder Counseling Group is going to offer a marriage enrichment conference soon, within the next few months. We just need to figure out the date to be determined.
Yay!
Yes. And so let's speak a little bit about your fees. What do you charge?
So for the 90-minute session, we're charging $120 for people who are doing cash
out of
pocket, I guess.
Yes.
Out of pocket. And then within those 90 minutes, like I said, the first 30 minutes is the lesson, to the Gottman lesson. And sometimes it's a short video, sometimes it's us talking about some of the lessons and role playing together. And then the next one is actually doing whatever we're learning, the 30 minutes, we're actually doing it in session together. So I've even had couples have arguments, heated arguments in front of me, just so I can see how they actually argue. Because how someone says they argue versus how they literally argue is sometimes night and day.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And I think you said to some couples, I was privy to be part of co-counseling with you, is that you prefer to be in there while they're practicing communication skills. And so you can, what do you call it?
I can referee.
Referee, right. And it's more psychoeducation.
It really is, yeah.
You're educating. You're helping them understand.
Yeah, and how to use those tools.
Yes, and how to use the communications tools, right. And do you think Gottman works well through telehealth?
I've used it through telehealth. I have. I don't prefer it, but it can be used just fine over telehealth. It can. But I personally, I like to do face-to-face. It's just how I function. But if we need to do telehealth, that is absolutely possible.
And I personally prefer face-to-face.
Oh, yeah.
I know COVID a couple years ago really not intervened, but really kind of destroyed this concept of coming to the office.
Yeah.
But I think we're moving back to that.
Yeah, I think so too.
As someone who has several offices in this one little space we have, I prefer to see offices being used.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So you do prefer face-to-face?
I do. I do. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit. You're married and you have children?
I have 5 kids.
Yeah.
I do, yes. And my youngest is 1 year old, about to be 2. So, and she's spunky. She's a little mini me, but she is spunky. Yeah.
I think you brought her in, didn't you?
I did, yes, last week.
Last week we weren't here.
No.
No, my wife and I were
bring her
traveling.
over again. Yes, she's a spunky little one.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have you with us. You have the privilege of being our very first podcast.
Yay!
You know.
Hi, Mom.
Yeah, our very first podcast on the Journey podcast at Pathfinder Counseling Group. We hope to produce a Journey podcast every Monday or once a week from here on out. And it is a production of Pathfinder Counseling Group in collaboration with the Pathfinder Media Group. So it's great to have you all visit us today and be with us. Look for us next week as we introduce to you another member of the team and what they offer our clients here at Clarksville, Tennessee, or our Tennessee clients within the borders of Tennessee on telehealth. So it's great to have this very first podcast. We'll see what we can do in the future.
All right,
Thank
sounds
you
good.
so much.